Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So devotees, we're continuing on with mantra 13. Let us just read the mantra again, and then we'll take up where we left off last night. Anyad evahu sambhavad, anyad ahur sambhavat. Iti shruma dhiranam, yenastad vichachakshire. It is said that one result is obtained by worshipping the supreme cause of all causes, and that another result is obtained by worshipping what is not supreme. All this is heard from the undisturbed authorities who clearly explained it. Yes, the undisturbed authorities. This is very important. Okay, so we last night we did verse 7 was the last verse. That whole string of verses from different Upanishads and so on, taken actually directly from Bhagavad Gita chapter 10 verse 8 purport. Yes. So now we go on to paragraph 8, and there Prabhupada just confirms that in this way, from the verses just quoted, it's confirmed that Narayan, or Krishna, who's the source of Narayan, is the cause of all causes. And Prabhupada refers again to Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, verse 1, which also says the same thing, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadya Adya Govinda, Sarva Karana Karnam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. So Prabhupada, it's just a short paragraph. Prabhupada concludes by saying, the really learned persons know this from evidence given by the great sages in the Vedas. They know this, that Krishna is the cause of all causes. And thus they decide to worship Lord Krishna as all in all. Such persons are called Buddha, or really learned, because they worship only Krishna. So now we go on to paragraph 9. And it's another short paragraph, basically, that the conviction, to be convinced that Krishna is all in all. Krishna is just the sum and substance of everyone. That conviction can arise in the heart when one hears the transcendental message from these different scriptures and the explanations of them from the undisturbed acharya or acharyas with faith and love. If we hear from someone else, then that conviction will not arise. And if we don't have faith and love, even if we hear from the undisturbed acharya, then it'll be very difficult. Or actually, Prabhupada says, one cannot be convinced. And those who are faithless are described in Bhagavad Gita as mudhas, fools or asses. And well, we've quoted this verse on a few occasions, but there in paragraph in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 11, avajananti mam mudha, Lord Krishna says that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. Yes. So Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. It is said that the mudhas deride the personality of Godhead because they do not have complete knowledge from the undisturbed acharya. You see, you got to hear from the undisturbed acharya, and best with faith and love. But even if you don't have faith and love, but you hear from the undisturbed acharya, then there's a chance of Krishna consciousness being awakened. So one who is disturbed by the whirlpool of material energy is not qualified to become an acharya. Yes. Right. So now we go on to paragraph 10. So here, Srila Prabhupada explains that before Arjuna heard Bhagavad Gita, he was disturbed by the material whirlpool. Prabhupada just said that one who is disturbed by the material whirlpool cannot become, or is not qualified to become, an acharya. And Arjuna, before he heard from Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, he was disturbed by the material whirlpool because he was very attached to his family, society, community, all these types of things. So therefore he wanted to be a nice, philanthropic, non-violent person. But when he became Buddha, or intelligent, by hearing Vedic knowledge, the Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, he changed his decision and became a devotee. And yes, so then Arjuna worshipped Krishna by fighting in the battle. And through doing that, he became a pure devotee. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the 10th paragraph. Such accomplishments are possible only when one worships the real Krishna and not some fabricated so-called Krishna invented by foolish men who, without knowledge of the intricacies of the science of Krishna, as described in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So we go on now to paragraph 11. So Prabhupada explains, according to Vedanta Sutra, Sambhuta, don't forget, in the verse itself, we're talking about the difference between Sambhuta, which means the Lord, and Asambhuta, which means, Prabhupada is applying it here to mean the demigods. So we should worship Sambhuta, the Supreme Lord, and we should not worship that which is not transcendental, that which is on the ordinary material level, even the demigods who are the highest on the ordinary material level. Yes, so Vedanta Sutra then says that Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance. It's the reservoir that remains after annihilation. Janmad yasya yataha. This is mentioned. We talked about this some days ago, how Vedanta Sutra begins Janmad yasya yataha, that we should worship that which is the original source of birth of everything. But Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada goes on to explain here which is the natural commentary on Bhagavad Gita, on Vedanta Sutra, by the author of Vedanta Sutra, maintains very clearly that the cause of all causes, the source of all emanations, is fully conscious. In other words, it's Krishna. Yes. And Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita 7:26, Vedaham samititani vartamanani charjana bhavishyani chabhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that's happened in the past, all that's happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. So in other words, Krishna is making it very clear that he is behind everything. He's fully conscious, and he's the cause of all causes. Sambhuta, he is the Sambhuta. But Prabhupada, as he's done a few times, quite a few times now in Isopanisad, he points out that unqualified so-called spiritual leaders who are affected by the waves of material life, they cannot know him fully. They try to make a compromise by saying that humanity is supreme and we should worship humanity. But they don't know that this worship is just foolishness, because humanity is imperfect. How many defects are there altogether? So Prabhupada says that the attempt by these so-called spiritual leaders to make everything very nice is something like pouring water on the leaves of a tree instead of on the root. And Prabhupada concludes paragraph 11 by saying, the natural process is to pour water on the root, but such disturbed leaders are more attracted to the leaves than the root. Despite their perpetual watering the leaves, however, everything dries up for want of nourishment. So then we go on to paragraph 12, and there, as Prabhupada explains, the Isopanisad advises us to pour water on the root, the source of everything. Worship of humanity on the bodily level is certainly less important than the soul, because the soul is the root from which all the different bodies come according to their karma. So therefore, serving humanity medically, socially, educationally, while simultaneously killing animals in the slaughterhouse is no service to the soul, which is the real root, like the immediate root of our existence. Of course, the ultimate root is Krishna, the cause of all causes. But in terms of maintaining our bodies and our bodily existence, the soul is the root of that. So then we go on to mantra 13. And as Prabhupada has done, Prabhupada is repeating a number of things to really drive these things into our heads. But definitely we're suffering in material existence. We are suffering in material existence. And the way to get free from disturbance is to hear and chant about the activities of the Lord, his qualities, his philosophy, his words like this. But the mental speculators, they think that these things, particularly the activities, are all imaginary. and therefore they won't hear them. So instead of hearing about Krishna, they promote themselves. They get their followers to sing about them. You know, if you're familiar with Hinduism particularly, you would be familiar with that phenomenon. Yeah, so Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, in modern times, the number of such pretenders has increased considerably, and it has become a problem for the pure devotees of the Lord to save the masses of people from the unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo incarnations. So now on to paragraph 15, and Prabhupada makes, it's an important point, and it's an interesting point, that the Upanishads generally, and you could say Isopanisad, but not as much as other of the great majority even of the other Upanishads. So in general, that group of literature, the Upanishads, they indirectly draw our attention to Krishna, whereas Bhagavad Gita, which summarizes all the Upanishads, it's called Gita-upanishad. It's direct Krishna consciousness and very clear Krishna consciousness. And therefore we should hear from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, which is expanding on the message of Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada refers to Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17. And let me just read the translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who's the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this is the point that Prabhupada was making in the beginning of this paragraph, that because Bhagavad Gita is direct Krishna consciousness, and Srimad Bhagavatam also, we should hear from them and our minds will be purified. Yes. And then to reinforce that, Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, verse 10. Tesham sadhati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvikam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So now we go on to paragraph 16, and here Prabhupada's explaining that by the mercy of the Lord within the heart of the devotee, through the Lord's inner direction and just his cleansing work, the devotee's heart becomes freed from all the contaminations produced by the modes of passion and ignorance. Yes. So non-devotees, of course, they're under the control of those two modes, particularly passion and ignorance. And of course, a person who's in passion can't become free from material hankering, and a person who's in ignorance can't know what he is, who the Lord is, or even practically what anything is, actually. So therefore, Prabhupada explains here in paragraph 16, second to last paragraph. So when a person's in passion and or ignorance, then there's no question, there's no chance of self-realization. So the Lord very mercifully cleanses passion and ignorance from the heart of the devotee. And in this way, the devotee comes to the platform of being a perfect Brahman, which means properly situated in goodness, but even more so, even more than goodness, to the transcendental platform. And this can be done with anyone. It's not only certain people, but anyone. If anyone comes under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, then whoever they are, whatever they are, they can become purified. And Prabhupada then refers to and quotes Bhagavatam 2:4-18. I'll just read the translation. Kirata Huna Andra Pulinda Pulkasha Abira Shumba Yavana, members of the Kasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So then, in the last paragraph, 17, Prabhupada says that when a person becomes a qualified Brahmin, then they become happy, and because they're situated in goodness, strongly situated in goodness, they become happy and they develop enthusiasm to engage in devotional service. And by the grace of the Lord, well, actually, Prabhupada says, automatically the science of God is unveiled before such a devotee. And then, so by knowing the science, a person becomes free from attachments, and their doubtful mind is cleared. And Prabhupada concludes the paragraph and the purport by saying, one who attains this stage is a liberated soul and can see the Lord in every step of life. This is the perfection of Sambhava, as described in this mantra of Sri Isopanisad. So now, devotees, we go on to mantra 14. So remember, don't forget, we're in part 3 of Isopanisad, which means from mantra 9 to mantra 14. And there are two sections in this part 3, from 9 to 11, which was discussing the absolute and the relative, the spiritual and the material, from the point of view of knowledge. And now here, the second section, from mantra 12 to 14, which is describing about the absolute and the relative, the transcendental and the material, in terms of worship. Right, so this then, mantra 14, is the last mantra in this part. And after this mantra, there's only another, 4? Another 4. We've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to go through 4 mantras. That's okay.